Yeah, we are live. I'm way late. It's like 7:30 already. Hopefully you guys will show up and hopefully I will still have, we'll see about the connection tonight. We're trying to rectify that and hopefully we'll get that going. But tonight I want to talk about cylinder heads and boost. Now we know from previous discussions that especially when we're talking about something that has good head flow, like a Coyote is an excellent example. If you have a factory Coyote and it's a factory 4-valve head, you really don't need to do very much to the head. Now, I've done lots of testing with Coyote stuff, and when we did it on the early motors on the 2011 version on the Gen 1, when we ported the head, we definitely picked up power. So you can pick up power, and you will pick up power, and it will improve even under boost. But it already has a lot, and especially on the Gen 3 stuff, they're impressive pieces. The same thing to a lesser extent with the LS motor. So a lot of guys can make, if we go good to, we do our typical thing and go to the wrecking yard, get a 4.8 or a 5.3, and then we put a camshaft in it and run boost on it. The factory heads, because they flow, relatively speaking, pretty well, they'll take you a long way. So it's not uncommon for, junkyard stuff to go into the 4-digit realm with a stock head. And we've talked about it many times, whether or not it's necessary to upgrade the head. It's not if the level that you can get to with the unported head is already achievable. There's no reason for you to spend money on porting the head, especially on the LS stuff. I would say the exact same thing about the Coyote stuff. I don't know why you would do that, because you can get to such a high level with the head the way that it is. Now, it used to be that I was all in on making the motor as efficient as you can. Do everything you can, port the head, good camshaft, springs, intake manifold, do all that stuff. And so you can make good power with a low boost level. Anymore, especially if you compare it to like a cost, a bang for the buck kind of thing, why would you do that? Why would you spend money on, big valves and porting the head, and especially if you're having it done professionally? The flip side of that is that you can do that yourself. And as I've shown in a couple of the videos on the do-it-yourself stuff, we're going to get into the V6 one because that's a really important deal. But I don't think I would try to home port a set of Coyote heads. I don't know that I'm qualified to do that. An LS thing, I feel fairly comfortable doing that. I'm pretty sure that I can improve them enough to make that it would make it worthwhile. And that doesn't cost anything. That just costs time. So, I mean, everybody's time is worth money, but that you're not having to send it out. Now, if we sent it out and I had Total Engineer Flow or somebody else do the heads, they would come out a lot better. But again, is that necessary? Is it worth that when we're already able to make whatever the turbo will make on an LS? So on an LS, in most cases, I don't recommend ported heads. If on a turbo application, if you're doing an NA motor, then yeah, I probably do, because you can make more power with a ported head than you can with a non-ported head. And the head ultimately is going to limit stuff. And you'll see the video that I did on the 5.7 LS1 stuff, especially for the Australian folks, because they love their 5.7 OG LS1. I showed you what can happen when you run a ported head on an NA one with a cam. You could pick up with the right head. You can pick up some fairly impressive power. So on an NA deal, I recommend that, and especially so on a stroker deal. So not so much on the Coyote and less on a turbo thing and less on a turbo thing on an LS. There are some instances, like I said, on NA deals, ported heads, good way to go. You can make a lot of power. What about applications, though, that aren't blessed from the factory with an overabundance of head? All of those are good examples where my connection's unstable, and hopefully I'll be able to get this done before I lose my connection here. But what if we have an application where we have virtually just no cylinder head flow? A 5-liter Mustang engine is a perfect example. An E7TE head is just terrible. I mean, it flows about 160 CFM. You're pressed to make more than 300 horsepower. I know guys can port those because I saw some of the stuff that Dave Vizar did. If you guys haven't seen his stuff, go take a look at his stuff. I've seen some very impressive numbers from ported stock heads, but I can't duplicate that. Maybe if I took all those courses, I could, but I can't duplicate that. So my option would be to get a better head. And I did all the testing on the cylinder heads for a 5-liter Mustang, for instance. There are lots of good heads out there, and there's fairly reasonably inexpensive deals too now with all of the skip whites and those kinds of things that are available, enforcer heads, all of that stuff. What about, and so that's easily solved, like on a 5-liter Mustang, because there's a bajillion heads for them, and they're all like 17 different kinds of awesome. Obviously, we're doing lots of math puns here today. But what about on an application like the 3800 Series 2 motor or Series 3 motor? Same thing. We have cylinder heads that don't flow very well. And there's not a readily available aluminum or even iron upgrade head for that would easily solve your problem, which is why I did the home porting thing. If you guys haven't seen that, check it out. I did just basic hand porting, and we picked up quite a bit. And I honestly want to give at least one of the chambers or one of the cylinders another go, because I think that there's even more. I'd like to get it up near 215 or 220 just from stuff that I could do, because if I can do it, then anybody can in terms of porting. I'm not the guy when it comes to porting. There are lots of guys out there that are good. Eric is a good example. Obviously, David Vizard, Dulcich is really talented. There are a lot of guys out there that can do that. Actually, Brule from Wastegate is pretty handy with porting tools. But if I can do it, then anybody can. But it's something that you have to do because there's not another alternative. So you could put bigger valves in it, which may or may not help. You can also improve it by going in and porting short turn and doing all the stuff, unshrouding valve, chamber, all that. And that all works good. And so my question is, on an application like that, if we just run the stock head and then we're putting an intake manifold on there, obviously we're going to put a camshaft in it, springs. And then when we ran the blower stuff, it works okay. But it would be better if we could bring the boost down and make more NA power. Because then with a blower, especially, we don't have to worry about really high charge temperatures. The lower that we can get the boost and still make power, the lower that we can get the boost, the better off things are, because there's no intercooler unless we put one on there. Now, I might be borrowing one of those to run the blower, but if we can improve it with the camshaft, improve the flow rate of the motor with the camshaft, and then with the head too, especially on the blower, I think we can get the boost down, and it would be a better combination because it would be safer and we wouldn't have to worry about charge temperatures nearly as much. On a turbo application, it's a little bit different because we're not limited by the flow rate of the blower. We can put whatever size turbo we want on there, but we're still limited by the flow rate of the cylinder heads. So I'm thinking if we port those heads and make them better on an application where we really don't have very much head flow, like it's not LS, kind of relatively speaking, it's not LS head flow, it's not Coyote head flow, it's not LS3 head flow or LT head flow. It's certainly not Honda or really, even as we saw, it's not even Chevy Vortec head flow. Now, we were able to get it up to that. I was able to get it up to that fairly easy with some minor porting. And I think that like I said, I think we can get into I don't see there's any reason we can't get to 220, even with me doing it. I think that I feel fairly comfortable that I can get there. There are guys that as we've seen that are going more toward 240, which I think is also possible. And that would be a good number. But if we can get it there, I just think it'd be so much easier to make good power with a turbo version of this motor by starting out with something that's already impressive, something that makes, instead of making close to 200 horsepower NA, it makes 300 horsepower NA, or maybe even more if we put enough camshaft and the right intake manifold, and if we have good head flow. So I think on an LS application and others, like I mentioned, the Coyote, and even I'm going to have the head ported on the K24 Honda, and we're going to run a big turbo on it and try to do a big bang on it. That's kind of a specific thing. Honestly, if I was building one of those motors or just putting one of those motors in a Civic and I was going to turbocharge it and I wanted to make 600 at the tire or whatever the number is, I don't think I would port that head. I mean, it's already really good. I don't think I would port a Coyote head, especially not a Gen 3 head. For most 1,000 horsepower and less applications, I don't think that I would port an LS head. But the 3800 head, even if I wasn't doing a big bang, I definitely think it's something that I would want to do or have done. I think you could spend a little bit of money or do it yourself and have a much better combination, because I think that a ported head in that instance is going to go a long way, because it's going to be kind of limiting without, I would love it if somebody would take a ported head and give it to China and say, hey, look, duplicate this, and then make it in aluminum. And then we would have, good things. Maybe I might want to raise the exhaust port a little bit. That would be cool too. But that would be awesome if somebody did that. Now, if we can get a few hundred guys to say, yeah, if you did that, I would be all in on buying some of those heads. Then maybe we could make that happen. But we'd obviously want to get a good set, and I could have somebody port them professionally and get a good deal, and or get a good make the head flow very well at kind of all the lift ranges, so that we could then duplicate that out of aluminum. But I wouldn't do that unless I had a big market for that. I just think it would be interesting. I think it would be cool to service a market that's not serviced right now. I know that there were guys that had aluminum heads for it, and I don't know how well they work, but I think that there's enough guys out there, and there may or may not be also another blower upgrade for this motor, because I just like it. I think it's kind of cool, and I think I'm thinking about introducing something and doing an adapter plate and making that work. So it'll be fun. So let's see what kind of questions we have. Also, if you notice up there, I mentioned things that if you guys haven't seen them up on Facebook and stuff, I'm trying to get rid of some of the stuff that I have laying around, just so that I can try to clear out some of the stuff that's in my 2 storage areas now, which is just getting ridiculous. A lot of that are cylinder heads, and a lot of that is lack of organization. Like, one of them doesn't have all the shelving units I have in the other one, and I need to put those up so that I can store things and organize them and have them be in their proper areas with all of the LS stuff, not like cohabitating with all the Ford stuff and the Cadillac stuff and the Barra stuff and the Maribara stuff, and but and that will all happen. It's just a matter of time. But I'm getting rid of a bunch of stuff. So is there anybody out there that's interested? I've got a few camshafts. Obviously, I've got some small block Ford stuff. I've got some big block Chevy stuff. I've got some small block Chevy stuff. I have a couple of LS cams. Just stuff that's been, I have stuff that's been laying around for 10 years or something. And obviously they all work. They have very little time on them because were just used on the dyno. And I've got a Crane HI6. If anybody needs an ignition amplifier for a distributor application, like a small block Ford or small block Chevy, you're going to run boost on it or whatever, they work well. What else do I have out there? I'm trying to think what I have here locally. I have the FR500 intake manifold, which I kind of want to trade to somebody for something kind of cool. I'm looking for a Honda Trail 90. So if anybody has one of those and is looking to trade an FR500 intake manifold for it, let me know. I'm trying to think what else is out there. I have some Ford roller rockers, and if they're bolt down comp aluminum roller rockers. If somebody has a set of factory Ford heads or a GT40 head or that kind of thing, and you need bolt down rockers for it, I have a set of those. I have a couple of the double roller timing chain sets for the LS. If anybody's interested in that stuff, if I am, please let me know, and we'll try to get that out to you. So I'll put my email address here, and you can send me an email. I just am trying to clean stuff out. So I put my email address up there, and if you guys are interested, and the other people obviously that are going to be watching this later on and not watching it live, you guys are welcome to send me an email if there's something. Yes, I do. I agree. The Trail 90s are awesome. I want to get like a nice one that's restored that I can rely on and I can use to go out and look for snakes and stuff. That would be awesome. Admiral, what was the big gimmick on the FR500? Well, it's magnesium, so it's also light and awesome. You have to hold it down, otherwise it will actually float away. And it's a dual runner manifold, so it has valves inside, throttle blades in all the runners to open up, and you can run on the long runner, and then you open it up, and then you run on the short runner. I don't have the actuators. The levers are on the intake manifold, but they came with, way back when, they came with cables. I'm thinking that you could use the aviator units for that to make it work, but let's see what kind of questions guys have. Adrian, give me mod motor stuff. I don't have too much mod motor stuff anymore. Justin, we'll start with you. Hey, man, I want to build my LQ9, and is rec port worth it? Yes, they are. Take a look at the video that I have up. I compared the best factory cathedral port to an LY6 rec port, so nothing special, just a run-of-the-mill rec port. A rec port head will probably make 20 or 25 better than the 243 will. If you port the 243s, it will make more than the rec port will. Blue collar, what happened to faster promise porting ahead for you? I thought that was happening. That was never going to happen for me. That was, they did one for Calvin, but it didn't work out for me. Richard, watch David Vizard on YouTube. I know David really well. He's doing a head for me right now. He's doing the 2.2 Chrysler head. In fact, I just got an email from him today saying that they poured the ports, so they're molding the ports to see what they are and see what they need to do, which will be kind of be cool. So he just should have a lot of good information there. I need to send him a head gasket and a valve. I think he wants an exhaust valve for some reason. Richard, what is your favorite budget supercharger for an LS? I want to keep mine at 550 horsepower at the wheels. I think it makes more sense to put money into a horsepower adder than an NA. There are lots of good ones. The Torque Storm is pretty inexpensive because then you don't have to have any kind of different intake manifold. The one that Tom sent me, I think, is going to be cool. It allows you, it's an adapter and an intake manifold that allows you to put on a 5.4, an M112 or an M122 from the Ford supercharger on there. So it's big enough to support quite a bit of power. I don't know how much that is. I know that the adapters on from the guys at Mac Daddy Parts, who did an awesome job, and allowed me to run that Cadillac supercharger, and that worked good. But as soon as I did that, the prices got jacked way up on the blowers, which used to sell for a couple of $100. But the adapters themselves are really nice, and so they're not cheap either. So I don't know what the total least expensive way to go is. Tommy, have you ever filled frame rails with foam? No, I haven't. Host, how do we contact you for parts? I just put my email address down there so you can use that email address. I do watch Revzilla. Russell, you have 2 Trail 90s for sale. Is one of them in good shape? And what do you want to trade for them? Danny, are you willing to send the Ford bolt down rockers to Australia? I have no idea what it would cost to ship them there. I mean, isn't that going to be more than they're worth? You're going to spend up more in shipping than you would just to buy them, I would think. Robbie, do you have a go-to LS camshaft? No, I have ones that I've used more than others, just because I had it laying around. And so if we have it, I'll use it, and then we use it over and over and over and over again. So it appears in a lot of the videos that I've done, but it's not because I like that one because nothing else works. For a turbo LS, almost any cam will work, and you can get whatever the power output is out of the turbo, whatever it will support, you can get with almost any camshaft. So there's not one I think that's better than others. Whoop, whoop. No LS6 intake manifolds. I've only ever had one of those, and it's not even mine. It's actually Westex. It came on some crate motor that they had, and we use it all the time, but it just stays there. I have never. Hey Richard, have you ever done any testing with the Godzilla 7.3 liter Ford? No, I have not. Wolf, question: why do some cams require a lower RPM limit than stock, even with springs and retainers? My engine, for instance, stock cam with springs and retainers is safe at 9,000, but aftermarket cams say 8,400. What they're telling you is not a maximum RPM normally. Normally, they're telling you not that it would be unsafe above that. It's just it's not making power. Usually, they give you the RPM range that the motor is making power at. And so even though you can rev your motor to 9,000, it's more than likely not making power there. Admiral, would you ever be interested in testing something like an O'Reilly's Power Torque remanufactured engine? I actually have, not the O'Reilly's version of it, but the guys from Blueprint own, God, what was the name of their remanufactured engine facility? I can't remember. But they offer basically like that. And as a matter of fact, they might be the ones selling those remanufactured engines to them. I'll think of the name, but they have really low buck, and I have one of those, and it's worked really, really well. I have a 302 Ford that's basically just a rebuilt small block Ford. It's a late model hydraulic roller deal, and we've put a bunch of intake manifolds on it and cylinder heads and all kinds of stuff, and it's worked very well. And those things work like a, you know, like you would expect a small block Ford to work, or Chevy or whatever you're running. Jeff Smith, our LSA puts down 715 wheel horsepower at 12 pounds. Nice. 419 stroker. We didn't port the heads or the supercharger. I would maybe port heads if I were to switch out to a larger supercharger. If you ported the heads, more than likely the boost would come down on that application. And if you port the supercharger, the boost will go up on that application. Any 6 liters for sale? Nope, I don't have those engines for sale. Where can we look up those parts you have for sale? I just listed them. I don't have them listed up anywhere. I have a few of them up on Facebook right now. Is the build on the 5.9 Magnum still happening? Yeah, I'm still, all of these engines are ongoing. So the next time I go down, we're going to do some more work on the 5.9. Sins RT, do you have any Hemi videos with stock heads and cam? Yeah, they all start out with stock heads and cam. I have a lot of them that ran, as a matter of fact, almost all of them, all of the comparisons, the cam comparisons start out with stock heads, and then we put on a 260 cam or 273 or whatever it is. So there are some of them up there. Do you have any small block Chevy heads? No, I do not. From yesterday, any reason why a marine application, they run timing gears? I don't know that, do they run timing gears on all marine applications? I mean, I've seen a lot of marine small blocks and V6s and various things where they just run normal double roller timing chains. So I don't know. I don't know if it's a noise thing. RR Automotive, Richard, what do you think about Vortec packs and superchargers? Which I have one of those also available. It's a reverse rotation Vortec, I think. They work great. They're like every centrifugal supercharger. They have a rising boost curve, so they make less boost at 2,500 than they do at whatever your maximum engine speed is. And ProCharger does that, and TorqueStorm does that. All of those kinds of superchargers do that, and they work well. I had a Vortec on my 5-liter Mustang for, I don't know, 85,000 miles. I think it was 10 or 12 years. And I ran it like at wide open throttle out the Silver State, and ran down the drag strip and road courses and all kinds of stuff. And it worked great. It never missed a beat. Daniel, Richard, did you say something about having a Yamaha? I do. I have a 125 that I want to get rid of, and it's in great shape. ES Restorations, have you tested an LS9 head? I have not. I take that back. I might have run one set. I think Brian Tooley sent me some LS9 heads at one time, and I'm thinking that I only ran them on the flow bench, maybe. I don't know if we ran them actually on a motor. Oh, so Admiral, I'm interested in seeing a big bang on the power torque motors, because supposedly some of the weaker engines get aftermarket upgrades in the reman shops, like stronger pistons and better rings. That would be interesting. I think that this motor just has cast pistons and big factory style rings. No LS6 intakes for sale. Richard, I'm a disabled vet. Thank you for your service. Trying to do an 85 El Camino SS LS swap on the cheap. What would be a safe, cheap power adder? The least expensive way to go would probably be to a do-it-yourself kind of turbo. I don't think I have any, Justin. I don't think I have any cathedral port intakes. I don't think I do. Russell, yeah, definitely send me an email. If they're in good shape and they run, I need something that's reliable, because I'm going to go out and go 10, 20 miles, and search around and stuff. And so I just need something that I know that's going to be reliable. James, 5.3 with flat tops, 862 heads, BTR stage 4 truck cam, Holley high ram, boost on E85. Thoughts? I think you're going to be a little disappointed in your combination of the stage 4 cam, even though it's the truck cam, and the high ram. You would be much happier, especially if you're only looking for 800 horsepower, if you had a smaller cam and a long runner intake. The motor would be much more responsive. I don't know what turbo you have on there, but if you're looking for 800 horsepower, it's going to be like an S475 or 7875, probably to be in that range. You would just be happier at the better boost response you have from the smaller camshaft. And then it will still make all the power that you want without any problem. It'll just be better in the lower part of the curve. But that will work. Lots of guys run the high ram and run like a sloppy stage 2 cam, which is going to be equally kind of, soft down low. The old Yamaha big wheel 200s are cool. I got a junker wheel tires and a motor, and it's good. I got a mint engine from a wrecked Honda FT500. The TT500s are the ones that I liked. John, that's right. Marshall engines. That's the one that I was trying to think of. Ryan, have you ever made good power with a 3V Mustang? Yeah, we ran a Vortec on one, or a Paxton, and we also ran turbos. I think it was a twin turbo setup on a 3V. 367 wheel horsepower is actually pretty good. I don't have any small block Ford aluminum heads. Jody, was it a wrestling match changing the pickup tube on your pickup? It wasn't terrible, but it did take time. And, obviously I've taken off a lot of those, just not in the vehicle. See, Admiral wants to know if anybody has an experience with a 4.7 liter single overhead cam Dodge. I don't have any. I maybe have seen one at a wrecking yard. Lucas, what brand is a good blow through 85 carburetor? We normally use a CSU, but I think Quick Fuel has them also. Zeke, what cam would you recommend for a 4.8 to make more mid-range power? Probably the Truck Norris cam or the Torque cam on the 4.8. Richard, a Yamaha TW200. I don't want like the 125 is what I use for a long, long time. I don't want a 2-stroke. What I want is a Trail 90 or even an old Honda Spree would be awesome too. I need something that I can mount a bunch of lights on because I need to drive slowly down the road and aim the lights over at where the road ends and all of the grass starts, because that's where they kind of hang out. They usually go out onto the road to get warmth that's still left over on the black surface. And so you can cruise at night and kind of see them, but you don't want to go very fast. And you also, like with a 2-stroke motor, you don't want it to be loud. So it'd be better if it was a little scooter. Admiral, it said 600 NA is a limit in 3V Mustang, assuming proper ring gap. We've made lots more than that. I mean, on boost. I think you need to use your clout. Well, this is all of it right here. So this is what you see. That's as much clout as I have. And get your hands on one of Robbie Gordon's off-road monsters for a dyno session. Robbie's pretty fast. He's fast in everything that he drives. Richard, do you think if I ported my 243 heads, I could match or come close to the flow numbers of the trick flows, the 225s? I don't know. You'd have to be really good. It took the guys at Total Engine Airflow, when Brian was there with their 243 heads, to kind of, I think that the heads I compared them to was a set of 235s, and they were pretty close to that. But those guys are really, really good at what they do. So I don't know how qualified you are or how much you've done it. But you can keep trying and do it. Those stage 2 heads that they did on the 243s also had bigger valves and stuff. Does BTR produce any Gen 6 blower cams? Are you talking about blower like a Gen 6 big block Chevy cams? They don't make any big block stuff, if that's what your question is. R&R Automotive, I have a low boost curve on my small block Chevy with a 355. The higher RPM, the lower the boost curve to too small of a charger on the small block Chevy. Yeah, just tell me what size blower you have on there, and that you could also have a belt slippage problem. Henry, do you still go to the drag strip, and what do you race? I haven't taken the last drag strip I went to. I'm trying to think. I used to go to Terminal Island, and we used to go to Carlsbad. I don't know that I've ever been to a drag strip around here other than when I was really young with my dad. I think we went to Sacramento, but I don't go to drag strips very often because I was always more of a road racer. What do you need snakes for? I just go catch them and take videos of them and play with them and then let them go. Snafu, what makes 5-liter Fox engines with Flowmaster mufflers sound undeniably identifiable? So do you think that a small block Ford sounds different than a small block Chevy with the same exhaust on it, with the same Flowmasters on it? Uh, 88, seeing a video on the fast LSXR intake with all the different interchangeable runner lengths would be cool. Boom, you get your wish because that video is already up. In fact, there might be multiple versions of that up. If you look in the LS3 intake video, I tested all the different runner lengths, and I also by itself tested all the different runner lengths. I even mix and matched them and put some long ones and some short ones together just to see what would happen. What we were trying to do is kind of make a single plane intake out of the EFI manifold. And then I also took the lid off the LSX and put the LSX RT on top of it to change the plenum volume, but that really didn't do anything. Is there any way to tune a stock ECU on a Ford F-150? It depends on the year, but yeah, there is tuning available for them. How many different heads did Oldsmobile make for the 350? And I've seen 8s and 5s. I don't know. Honestly, I know very little about the Oldsmobile engine family, other than everybody wants me to test a 455, and it's probably going to be easier for me to find a 350. So, Admiral, you think the ones that they're upgrading are the 008 cam Ford stuff? Daniel, how are you, sir? Thank you for everything. Thank you for watching. I've learned a lot. Keep it up. I just built a big block Chevy 23cc dome piston. That's kind of the go-to. 781 heads. Will be a good sized turbo for a fun street car. Just tell me how much power you want to make. But like for a big block, an S480 would be a good kind of a starter turbo. That's like 1,000 horsepower turbo. Have you done a Truck Norris? Michael wants to know if you've done a Truck Norris on a 4.8 yet on the dyno. I haven't run any of the Truck Norris cams in anything yet. Richard, I have a Trail 90, good condition, just needs a seat. Are those? What about using an electric scooter? I'd rather have gas because I know that can get me home. No big block Chevy heads. What's a good cam for a mild 350 with Vortec heads on it? You're gonna need something that has low lift. You're gonna have to definitely have to upgrade the valve springs, obviously, and maybe cut down the guides to have retainer to seal clearance for that. But something that's going to be, I think it's less than 450 lift, and then something that's probably like a 212, 218 is a pretty good cam for that. Blaine, hey man, love the videos. Any idea when the video for the LS4 platform is coming out? That video would come out after I actually tested an LS4, which I've never done. I would like to though. Yeah, send me over some pictures. And yeah, you could. It's gonna be might be hard to find trick flow heads available right now. R&R Automotive. So you have a Vortec V9G. So that is a fairly small blower, but I mean, how much power are you making? That should support. I'm trying to think. I think we made 600 horsepower with that thing. AFR 210 heads are as cast. I've not seen this hit, but at $500, that's all that an AFR 210 head is. $500 a piece. That's cheap. So it looks like I have a fresh set of 243 heads. You should be able to sell those. Snafu, what was your... Okay. I'll email you about the Yami. The cam gears and the marine engines may have been in a twin engine application where one is... Oh, yeah, it could be a counter rotation deal. And that's fairly common in marine applications. Ford made their FE motors in reverse rotation for marine applications, and so did some of the other manufacturers as well. What is MHS? King Skids, what's your honest opinion on the Summit LS Pro rotating semis? I think that they're good. I have one, and it looks like good stuff. And I say that only because if you see what we've done with stock stuff, I mean, how could any forged assembly not be a lot better than that? And where are you going to go with that forged assembly? I mean, you know, we're already at 1,500 with the stock stuff, so you know, forged stuff should go a lot more than that. Dean, you're a Cleveland guy. Okay. Exhaust sound test 5-liter versus a 350 Chevy. So like a 305 versus a 350 then? Infamous Nova. I have cams for sale, big block, small block Fords. Matthew, I watched a video from Engine Quest last night. They just released heads that are a combination of LS3 and LS7. We've tested some of their heads, and in fact, you're probably going to see that coming up on Engine Masters. But they have a reproduction of the 243 head, and they have a reproduction of the LS3 head. I don't know what they cost, but they're available, and I didn't know about this LS3 and LS7 deal. During, we're still waiting for push rods from them. Brian Dooley Racing doesn't make push rods in-house. Not that I know of. I'd like to see a Pontiac straight 6 overhead cam. I would too. I contacted Chad Reynolds, and he put me in touch with somebody that had one or two of those. And I was just going to do a video with him because he had stuff. So that would still be kind of cool. Casey, I have no idea if a Ford 3.8 head will fit on the 4.2. Jeremy, I have a 2001 Mustang GT. Okay, 462 valve with an S-trim blower. That's a good blower, 11 pounds. Sometimes it feels like the power goes flat. How would I know if the belt is slipping and I don't hear it? You could see it with a boost gauge if you have a boost gauge, or you could see it on the chassis dyno also, because they could hook up a boost gauge and you could data log it. Infamous Nova, the cam, the magic cam that I was talking about that we use on a bunch of stuff was, I don't even know what the part number was. I couldn't tell you. I know that it was a 4.7 swap, and I know that it was like 275, 282. I'd have to look up the data on some of the tests that we ran to get the actual specs, but it was something close to that. So it was a big-ish cam. You know, it was more than 700 and less than 800 lift, if I remember right. It was like a 275, 282 kind of thing. And so it did really well on, we were running it on a 500 inch or 540 inch big block at the time. Oh, Dean, are you talking about the, who was that last night? Clayton or something? That was going nuts. Shooting blank. Should I run 317 or 790 heads for a turbo 408? I don't know what pistons you have, or should I go aftermarket heads? You could also go with factory rec port heads. I don't know what kind of power you're trying to make. I don't know what application it's for. I don't know anything about it, so it'd be hard for me to say. The 799 heads obviously will have higher compression. If you're only looking for 1,000 horsepower from a turbo 4.8, you could close your eyes and pick any cylinder head and it will work. 702, are Flowtech 180 heads for a small block Chevy okay for a 230, 236, 489 lift, 110 LSA, extreme energy 275 or 274 hydraulic flat tap cam? Yeah, that I've never tested those Flowtech heads, but 180cc small block Chevy head is fine for that camshaft. Overbuilt's looking for an IT200. Richard, what do you reckon the aviator heads flow? I don't know. I don't know that I've ever flowed any of them. Keto, are AFR 305 heads too big for 496? No, that's a real good application for that. Titan, do you think an extreme energy 212, 218 hydraulic roller cam for 496 big buck and a daily truck is reasonable? I think it's a little, you might find it a little on the small side if you're getting in the throttle a lot. It will work good at part throttle, and it will work good maybe up to 4,000 or something like that. But on a 496, I might pick something a little bigger than that. And I say that only because when I was putting together it was a 454 in our 77 dually Blue Max, actually just nicknamed Max because it was already blue, so it would have been redundant. I picked a Crane emissions legal cam for it because we wanted to stay emissions legal, and it was like a 206, 212, and it was way too small for that motor. I think we only ended up making, I think I made less than 1 horsepower per cubic inch when we ran it on the engine dyno, which is not very good for a 454. But we ended up redoing it and putting more camshaft in it, and then it made a lot more power and a lot more torque. Because I was thinking, you know, well, we're going to put a small cam in it, and I even put tri-Y headers on it, small diameter tri-Y headers, and some sort of foolish very small dual plane intake manifold, because, you know, we want that low speed torque. Well, none of those things did that. Oh, modular head shop. Okay, I'm not familiar with them. What's the best camshaft for a 351 base 408? I don't know how to answer that. There's lots of good ones. I have a 408 video up where we ran 2 different camshafts. We ran a big camshaft, which is going to make lots of power and sacrifice power down low. And then we ran that XFI 236 cam, and that worked well also. Makes less peak power, but more power down low. Snafu, so you're saying that the 5-liter sounds identifiable. Okay. My 5432 valve will have 11.5 to 1 compression, 7,500 peak power rated cams. You got to make sure that you also have the intake that wants to run at 7,500 as well. Kingsman, why does the HO firing order make more power than a regular 302, 351? I don't think that the firing order does. I don't think you'd see any power from the firing order. Keto, I think we answered that. The AFR heads are not too big. King Skid, that's what I'm leaning towards. I've got a VS Racing 85 millimeter 243 heads. I'm not sure which cam to run. There's a lot of cams that you could run to get 1100 horsepower. I don't remember what size motor that was, but if you can tell me what size motor it was, I can kind of give you an idea on camshaft. I don't know if Sacramento Raceway, Cameron, I don't know if Sacramento Raceway is still open. A 350 Vega, though. I like that. That's OG stuff. It's going to be a no prep S10. Okay. Snafu, how can I retard time for nitrous in a J37 on a stock ECU? If you got really clever, you probably could activate the, you could send a signal from the knock sensor, and that will probably pull timing. I don't know what their control strategy is, but it's something that I've seen people use in the past. I think it was on a Neon, and I think that the factory timing, I think they pull 4 degrees or something like that away, or 6 degrees, and he ran it under boost, and he tricked it into sending a signal, and that worked. So that might be something you could try. Cody, 600 wheel horsepower, NA LS3 416. That's a lot of power. 7,000 RPM engine, which LSX runner length, thinking mid lengths. You can try that. You're just going to lose a lot of power. Take a look at the video that I have up. We were on the LS3 intake test on the EFI version. We ran it on a 416. So you can see how well each of them did. Or if you want, just send me an email and I can show you the power curves of all 3 of them. When will you experiment with a true big bang talking when 2 cylinders fire at the same time? Honda did that on their motorcycle. Boss 290 intake. Okay, with a carbon art intake lid and AccuFab. Okay, the Boss intake is good. Brian, stock bottom end LS2 with LS3 heads. Good combination. Wanted to increase compression to 14-1. That's going to be tough. I like the head, but not sure I want massive dome pistons with the big CC head. I think you are overthinking it. I don't know why you want 14-1. I don't know why you're set on a number. What you want is the thing that to be efficient, and I'm not sure a big dome piston is the way to go there. I think you'd probably be better off with a smaller chamber and something closer to a flat top, mill the head, and maybe a slight dome in the piston if you're, overly concerned with getting lots of static compression. Overbuilt. I have seen the YouTube channel Garage 54. I like I like the Russian stuff that they do there. That's pretty cool. I'm thinking about boosting my 496. I'm not sure what cam is in there. Nothing on the end of it, but I know it's healthy. Is there a good way to find out? Yeah, you can easily measure the lift. I mean, you just put a dial indicator on the valve or on the retainer, and it will tell you exactly what the lift is. That's not really going to tell you much. You really want to know what the duration is to know how big the camshaft is. Rush, I'm following your videos and trying to cam swap in my old LR4, but the tune in California is more than all the parts. Any way to do it for less? There's none that I know of. I mean, if you put a camshaft in, it's definitely going to need to be tuned. UPS mech, I'm definitely going to revisit the 292 and the 4200. What ECU can run the DPI injection on the Gen 3 Coyote? They just ran some direct injected Coyotes. Mark Gerhardt from Holly ran his there. So I think Holly does that already. Best head and cam combo for a daily driver 302. Take a look at the cylinder head videos that I have up for the 5-liter Ford, if that's what you're talking about. The first one is probably the best one for you because it has a fairly mild camshaft in it. I think it's a 264. And there's a bunch of different heads that you can combine with that for a daily driver. And you can just pick one. There's lots of good heads. I like the Trick Flow, the standard twisted wedge head. That works really good. If you can get a good deal on something else. I haven't tried any of there's lots of stuff that's come out since I did that, like the Skip White stuff and Enforcer heads and things like that. And I didn't ever test those because they weren't there when I did that testing. Dan, what is your favorite engine? It's whatever the next one I get to dyno test is. King Skids, I don't know. I like picking milder camshafts for turbo applications. Like I said, because it just helps the bottom part and has no effect on the top part. People are still kind of stuck on, oh, I need 1,000 horsepower. I got to have a big cam. No, you don't. What you have to have is 1,000 horsepower turbo. That's going to decide that part of it. Now you need to decide this front part of it where all of the response rate and the most of the driving comes in, except at the track. And that's why a smaller cam, I think, is a better idea. Because you can get 90% of the power that you get from the bigger cam, just get more drivability, and then you'll get all of the power from the turbo. Oil's an outlaw. You can run your LS2NA with ring gap until you get the boost. It's not going to do anything to it. What's the best tuner to use for an LS? I don't know that. If you're talking about a person as a tuner, or if you're talking about the ECU tuner, I don't know either one of those because I don't do that kind of tuning. You don't have to remove it, Keto, to find out what the duration is, but you would have to put a cam wheel on it though, a degree wheel, and it will tell you the duration. Yeah, Cody, I think that the long runner just makes more average power. Even if it loses out a little bit at the top, it's really hard to beat. On an LS3, if that's what kind of head you have, I wouldn't put a fast on it. I would just put a stock LS3 intake manifold on it. The fastest doesn't really get you much. DB Esquire got my BTR Truck Norris kit today. Nice. Good score. I thought that they were out of stock. Richard, do you think a 331 small block Ford could make enough torque to move a 98 E150? Yes. Just make it so that it's a torquey combination. Well, let's say if you have a Precision Pro Mod 88, that's a lot of turbo on a baby motor like a 4.8. You got to have a big cam to spin it. Yeah, but the ones that I'm talking about are the 1,000 horsepower and less kind of combinations, where a 4.8 with a small cam is going to work out a lot better. If you're running to 8,500, then you have to have the camshaft that's going to run out there. Have you ever done any testing on power loss from the larger ring gap? Yes, I have. I ran the motor before we put the ring gap in and ran it after, and it didn't do anything to the power. And that was at about 30 thousandths. I haven't gone more than that to find out where it starts losing power. Do you think that there's more benefit when running a lot of nitrous or methanol when using a carb salt intake or over an EFI intake manifold? I don't. Those two things are different. So you want to run lots of nitrous or lots of water methanol injection? I'm not sure what your question is. The intakes do what the intakes do. Adding nitrous on top of that just adds to whatever's there. So whatever difference NA your intakes make, adding nitrous, if you add 100 horsepower with nitrous, it's just going to add 100 horsepower to whatever's there. Admiral, call me crazy. Would you ever try dyno in a hybrid setup? I don't know that we could do that on the dyno, but I wouldn't be adverse to that. I mean, I'm open to all kinds of new technologies. What's needed is an engine that moves enough air and compresses it to a high enough pressure to make 1,000 horsepower. Barring rules over displacement or use of power adders, then cam choice is critical. Cam choice is not critical on a 1,000 horsepower turbo motor. On a turbo LS that making 1,000 horsepower, I can walk over to my shelf and close my eyes and pick any LS camshaft that's up there. Let's say that there were 30 of them and I could pick any of them. And we know that it's going to make more than a stock cam, and I could put it in there and it will make 1,000 horsepower if I have 1,000 horsepower turbo. It's just going to take a different boost level to do it. I've had this discussion with people many, many times. They think you can only make it if you have the right turbo cam, and that's 100% not true. I know because I've tested it 30, 40, 50, or 100 times. And if you pick a camshaft and think about it this way, instead of thinking about turbo and camshaft, think about it this way. You have a stock motor with a stock camshaft in it, and then you put a cam in it. Forget about whether it's a turbo cam or an NA cam or a nitrous cam, because none of that in the range that I'm talking about, none of that even exists. Think about it as a cam. So I put a cam in, and the cam then changes the power curve of the NA motor. So now we're making more power somewhere, maybe a little less at the bottom, depending on what camshaft you pick. You've now changed the power curve. So when you add boost to that, from an S475 or whatever kind of turbo you have, the boost is just going to add on top of wherever your new starting point is with that camshaft. And so if now, instead of 350 horsepower, which would be kind of typical for a 5.3, a stock one, the way that we run it on the engine dyno, one that we get from the wrecking yard, just let's say you put a good camshaft in it. Let's say it makes 410 now. Okay, so it makes 410 horsepower. For me to get to 1,000 horsepower with a S475 or an S480, a VS7875 is just going to take some amount of boost. And I can get there with that camshaft. It doesn't even matter what the camshaft is. If it raised the power output from 355 to 400 or 410 or 420 or 450, whatever the number is, I can now get to 1,000. It doesn't make any difference what the cam specs are, what the magic valve events are. None of that. None of that makes a difference. It makes a difference on the last 5% where people are talking about dedicated race motors that are pro mods or specific race applications where you have a turbo, where you're turbo limited. I can only run a 76 millimeter wheel and some other kind of size hot side, and I can only run that, and then I can do whatever else I want to the motor in those kinds of applications, or when we're trying to make 2,000 or 2,500 or 3,000 kind of pro mod power, we can talk about different kinds of camshafts for that. If you're looking at 1,000 horsepower and less, it doesn't make any difference. Have you ever run methanol injection on an NA motor? I've run water meth injection on an NA motor on a Coyote, and it works pretty well. I've heard the cams with 107 and 108 LSAs are bad for turbos because they have too much overlap. Again, like I just explained, if that camshaft makes some kind of power curve and you add boost to that, it will make power. It wouldn't be my first choice, but you can run that. I'm not saying it's ideal. I'm just saying you can run that. What's your opinion on 4.7 cam swaps and the tunnel ram? Well, the Magic Big Flex Chevy cam that I ran was a 4.7 swap. So obviously they work, but it's not, the 4.7 swap itself isn't going to make power. Spiker, I'd love to see videos on the different stock heads for big block Fords. I kind of would like to see that too. I'd like to see the difference, but I don't know if we can run it because I thought that there's something different with the deck height of the big block Fords. The late model EFI heads, I'd like to see those compared to, you know, the Dove heads, or I think I had a set of, they were 68s or 69s. They were the small chamber deals that we ran on that 460 that I had. The guys from MPG port, and they did a great job. They sent me their 600 horsepower package and it made like 608 or something. So they were like spot on their estimation. They supplied a camshaft and they supplied the head and said, run that single plane intake and the carburetor, and it will make 600 horsepower with that combination that you have. And I'm like, okay, perfect. They obviously know what they're doing. I met them out at Engine Masters. They had a short deck, an 8.2 deck, 410-inch entry into Engine Masters. And I'm like, that's never going to work. As it turns out, I really don't always know what I'm talking about because it worked just fine. Keto, is a Holley Terminator 4500 throttle body too big for a 468 with AFR 305 heads? No, it's not. I think you'll find that the 4500 intake manifolds make more power than the 4150 versions do, at least what I found in the testing that we've done. And that amount of airflow, it's not going to flow that amount of air unless the motor is using that amount of air. So if it's a 1,000 CFM motor, it's only going to use 1,000 CFM worth of that throttle body. And also, by the way, a big throttle body, unless they're relying on the signal from the throttle body, big throttle bodies don't do anything to low speed power. They don't hurt low speed power at all. In fact, what they do more often than not is greatly enhance low speed power, at least relative to throttle angle. Because all of a sudden you've cracked open the throttle, but now it's a ton of flow because the throttle blade's bigger. And so they tend to make the thing feel more jumpy and to some extent less drivable. The example I use is I put a 65 millimeter throttle body on my Ford Focus, and it was just a little too touchy. And the same thing with big throttle bodies, like on a Roots blower or a twin screw blower, like a Kenny Bell. We put big throttle blades on them, like a big 90, or even the big oval that they have that's 22 or 2300 CFM. It can get a little touchy especially for driving in the rain. Karen, if I resurface my 862 head, do I need to get different push rods? Not if you go a reasonable amount that most people do. Most people go 30 thousandths or less, because then you start running into problems with the intake manifold fitting. And there's usually 30 thousandths leeway in the and how much the lifter will depress, because you have a range of a quarter of a turn to a turn and a half or so, and that's probably enough. But you know, if you were already on the too long, you might need to go down, because then that might push. Someday playing with a rotary. Yeah, I reached out to somebody, tell me the rotary guy, Rob, to see if he was interested, and hopefully he'll get back to me and see if we can put together a motor and run it on the engine dyno. I think that'd be fun. Hostile would love to see a difference in running a smaller pulley on a centrifugal bullet by limiting the boost with a wastegate. You can do that. It's not recommended by any of the centrifugal manufacturers, but it can be done. The other way you can do that is restrict the inlet of the blower, and that's more likely what they would like to see, because then you're not having the blower flow an excess amount of air, which is not good for it. It takes it to a different part of the curve. What air filter do you recommend for your motor? And for my motor, I use a stock one. And as a matter of fact, in the whole time I've owned the truck, I've never even checked it. So I probably should. But when we ran the Honda at Bonneville, we had a giant size one. It was a big 4-inch tube, and it was the longest K&N that we could find. Richard, what do you recommend for a 5-liter 302 carburetor EFI? They both work fine. They both will do the same thing. The carburetor tends to make a little bit more power than most of the EFI manifolds. Yes, Rob Dom. Richard, do you know Craig Lieberman? I don't know Craig. I've never met him. I've never met Rob either, but I would like to. I'd like to go down because I think Rob is in California. I'd like to go down and see his stuff. Okay, one more minute. Chicken, do you recommend any turbo kits for the 5.3? I don't, because I don't ever test kits. Very rarely have I ever tested actual kits. I have done stuff from the guys from HP Performance back in the day, but I don't know what chassis they go in. And a lot of times a chassis kit doesn't fit the way that we need it to fit on the dyno, so I'm not going to redo it. We just run the turbo size, and all the other stuff kind of takes care of itself. I've had to clean my 5.3 NAS airflow from Canon oil. Yeah, that happens. Tom is in the house. See, I gave you a shout out earlier, man. Okay, last question. Dustin, you get the last question for the night, and unfortunately, it's going to be a no. Are there any long tube headers for a 92 S10 with a 355 that you know that fit? I don't. I don't usually get into that specific fitment stuff, because when we run stuff on the dyno, we just run headers, and it's just a long tube headers, because they have basically Wastegate has kind of sprint car headers that we run. Just it makes access to the plug wires and things like that, much easier. And so it's easier just to put those on, and we just keep running those over and over again. So that we have to keep running. Oh, well, this engine is for a Chevelle, and this engine's for a Camaro, and this engine's for a Corvette, and yada, yada, yada. And have to run specific ones for that. That's what they're going to do on the chassis dyno. Keto, you want the last question? Your 496 is already built. It has 66 Stingray 427 heads. Man, what are you putting those? Those are probably valuable heads. Do I need to change the push rods when switching to AFR heads? You need to measure them for sure, and it probably will be different. I don't know who Jason Camisa is. Watch out for Sasquatch Girls. It's rut season. It is pretty squatchy in this area, so thank you guys all for showing up. I will see you guys all tomorrow. And it looks like we're finishing off November and going into December, which would be awesome. Thanks, guys.